Hello and welcome to the TSM Fanhub Podcast. This is episode number 5. It's our 5th episode. Look at that. We got over the month bump. I'm here. I'm your host, Josh. I'm here with my co-hosts. We've got Brad, Jeff, and Chris. And I need to find my show notes, so that's perfect. So we doing this every week, talking about TSM. So I just want to tell you guys what we're here for. We're here to be your center for TSM news, learn about the players, learn about the organization, find out what games happened over the past week, and find out what's coming up. So we're going to get right into it. We've got announcements, and then we're going to get into some game analysis. The biggest announcement, I don't know if any of you guys heard this week, but there was one of the TSM squads actually won their regional finals.
Wait, there was a tournament this weekend?
Yeah. I know you guys were all tuned into Zero at PAX, but actually the League of Legends team was able to win the 2017 Summer Split. They beat Immortals in a 3-1 fashion. We'll talk more about that later. That's just obviously the most important announcement that we could think of for this week. But speaking about Zero and a tournament at PAX, Zero was at PAX this weekend, and there was a tournament. It was kind of a smaller tournament, so we're not going to go too in depth. Jeff, you want to briefly describe what's going on there?
So basically, this was very much a small tournament. Didn't really count for a whole lot because it was a lot of these tournaments at events don't always count for a lot because they're not primarily focused around the tournaments. He did go through a pretty nice winners bracket, taking down Nero in the grand finals and in winners finals as well. He took down Salem, who was a player who's on the rise. But in general, it's getting to a point where we're seeing a lot of just domination. So there becomes, as you dominate more, there's just less and less to talk about. So as the better they get, essentially, it just kind of gets to a point where we're getting used to winning. And while this is a smaller tournament, it's still just a show of force from Zero in a way.
Yeah, and it seems like he's been able to constantly assert his dominance as the head gorilla or little monkey or whatever.
Yeah, there's a reason why he's the best Smash 4 player in the world.
Right, and we did see him faltering a little bit, and by faltering I mean getting second a little bit, but he's definitely looking back in form. And if you're a Zero fan, there's really not too much to be worried about in the future. Yeah, so that's kind of all we've got for that. The next thing we want to touch on briefly, just because it could have some far-reaching impact into the NALCS, is this week. If you were browsing the main League of Legends subreddit, you saw that H2K put out a letter kind of saying, hey, we are losing a whole bunch of money by doing this, and because of that, we are no longer going to have a team in the EU LCS. And it was kind of, it felt just kind of like a shot across the bow to Riot EU. And so then I think 2 days later, Riot released this thing saying, hey, we're going to change up the format for Europe. And my initial reaction, I don't know what your guys' initial reaction was, that this is horrible. This is like let's put together some things that haven't been working for us over the past 2-3 years, and let's see if we make them even more prevalent, if they'll keep not working for us. I will say one thing is, it's practically franchising, as there are no more relegations, and that is one of the biggest. I think that is one of the biggest pluses to come out of this whole thing. So the entire thing is not garbage. But if you don't know, briefly, I say that word too much, by the way. If you don't know,
it's okay.
They're opening up Europe to 24 teams. There's going to be 4 separate regions of 6 teams each. The top 2 teams from each region will go to the main kind of league type of thing. I don't have it up in front of me right now. And then there will be kind of like a play-in tournament for the rest of the teams, and championship points and world seeding and all of that will be determined there. The biggest thing that concerns me is for the 10 teams that are in the LCS right now, the EU LCS right now, they get to declare their region. And I don't see a point as one of those top teams, maybe like as one of the top 5 teams in Europe. I don't see a point to, choose a region that none of the other top teams are in, because you're not going to have decent competition. So I could really see a scenario where we see, 5 of the teams go one place, 5 of the teams go another region, and so you have 2 strong regions and 2 regions that have a bunch
absolutely
of teams.
abysmal.
Yeah, that have nobody. And if that doesn't happen, then you have 4 regions that are dominated by 1 or 2 teams and 4 teams you've never heard of. What are you guys' thoughts, initial reactions on this as it came out?
One of my initial reactions was the same one that you would have saw on that post on the league subreddit. Like, EU viewership is already low, so let's make those low viewers have to decide what, region, if you want to call it that, they want to watch. Like, there's 4 different ones, and that's it's not gonna absolutely, divide everything by 4, but I feel like it's gonna knock a lot of their viewership off.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty sad to see, because I think this is really going to drastically lower EU competition. And don't get me wrong, as an NA fan, I don't exactly like EU, but I do like having healthy competition. I think that only makes us better. And if they drop in quality like a ton from this happening, then it's only going to be worse on the international spectrum.
Yeah. I think the caveat on all of this is all speculative. It's Jacob Wolf. He's usually right about what he's writing. Usually it's not completely unsubstantiated claims. There were a couple comments in the comment section on the Reddit that were saying kind of like, so MSF Spoon was saying, while I can obviously not get into the specifics of which are included in the Jacobs article, some right, some wrong, lots of critical pieces not discussed. Whatever, he goes on to talk about it. So it's maybe not all of this stuff is happening. Maybe some of it's happening, and it sounds like there are some things that aren't talking about yet. So I would assume that there's going to be some sort of revenue sharing, which is needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most heartening thing that can come out of this is not the Riot release. So this isn't something that Riot has to now walk back on. If they were planning to go this way, they have now the teams, know what they're doing. The community has an idea, and so they can definitely look into that and kind of adjust on the fly. But they are kind of running out of time to decide what's going to happen with EU for the next year. I think this could have effect on North America for 2 reasons. The first reason being, if players in Europe, maybe not the top players, but some players don't think that they're going to be able to get compensated as well, just because maybe there's not as much money in the scene because there's worse teams trying to grow organizations, they're going to be looking for a spot in the franchise, and they're going to be looking for those import slots over in North America. The other thing is, I think you could see teams completely like dropping all of their players and trying to become a completely North American. I mean, we already saw teams applying for franchising in North America, and I think this is another place where teams are like, no, we'll seriously drop all our players and leave because Europe is a sinking ship. So
the first thing I thought was, what if G2 comes over, drops everyone but Zen and Mithy, and then picks up the rest of a North American roster? Like, I'm not exactly sure who they could pick up, because obviously that would leave up mid and jungle, which it's tough to find good mid laners in NA. But at the same time, it would be a really interesting thing to see such a dominating thing come to North America. But it would also suck to see it leave EU.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking of with all those teams, where are they going to get the players? Are we just going to start seeing low diamond or high diamond players. I know there's a ton of challenger and masters players, but are we gonna start seeing? It's gonna make the competitiveness, of course, go down with more players. And I know solo queue challenger is, I mean, it's good and all, but it's not that competitive level that you
Yeah.
need to be at. So are we just going to see a ton of bad teams? Like, I don't know what to expect even out of this.
Yeah, I mean, we're just gonna get like another version of the Wolf's Claw or some shit. But he'll be like a worse Golden Glue probably.
Hold on.
Not to get too savage too quickly, but let's face it, if let's say the G2 hypothetical did happen where they bring over Sven and Mithy, because those are the two best players on that team.
Pobelter, Smithy. Think about that.
Why would they ever leave Immortals?
But just, I mean, I'm just throwing out, but even think about that type of scenario where you have decently solid North American players joining. I mean, even Dardoch on a team with them. I feel like the options are endless, and it's not a bad look for those teams, and it's a really bad sign for Europe. So hopefully we get a Riot official announcement coming up soon that actually sets out all the details of what's going on over there, and hopefully they use some modicum of common sense in making this decision. Moving right along, our next order of business. So I don't know if any of you guys were following on Twitter the tweet storm, or whatever you want to call it. If you were following Thorin and what he was tweeting after TSM won, followed up 2 days ago, I believe, or 2 days later, with a Thorin's Thoughts video. If you didn't watch it, watch it if you want to.
Yeah, you're not missing a whole lot.
You're not missing too much. So I would actually, I'd actually like to talk about this a little bit, and then I'm going to hand it over to Chris's rant section for the week. So I watched through the whole thing. The first thing I want to say is everybody just needs to chill out. And yeah, I mean, everyone just needs to chill out. I first want to talk to Thorin, which is to say talk about him. He's a smart person. He's not a dumb person. I don't care what you say about him. You can watch his videos on any of his topics, and he's a smart person. He's not out of touch with League. He knows what he's talking about, and he doesn't. He may have a slight bias against TSM, but if he does, it doesn't show in his whole body of work. There have been times where he's said things and done things towards players, or I guess mostly said things towards players and the org and stuff like that. But as far as reporting how the TSM teams are playing, he's done a very decent job at that. So he's a smart person, so he knows that a video like this isn't going to change anything. And this is, I think, where his problem lies, because one of two things is going to happen. He knows he's not informing any of us of anything that we don't already know. We all know that stupid people say stupid things, and the more stupid people you get together, the louder they're going to become, and the more stupid the things are that they're going to say. And so he puts out this video, and it's not like he's informing the public, and it's not like he's going to change. He knows that he's not going to change the quote unquote, salty TSM fans and make them, cure them of their salt. Like that's not going to happen. And he knows that. So he's putting this video out, I think, in part to stir the pot a little bit more. And I wouldn't even say he's doing this to get views, because he could just make the normal videos he keeps making and make plenty of views. I think he's trying to do this to prove his point. So he's making this video about how salty TSM fans are and how illogical they are, and they're all going to respond to this video salty and illogical, which, maybe that's a smart move on his part. But all of that to say, if you haven't seen it, that's why I would say, it's not really worth your time watching it because it's really a video trying to prove a point that's proved by people reacting to the video, which is like some weird type of, circular logic.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, which, whatever. And so I was looking at how many views. People are saying, oh, he's doing this to get the views, which also, too, like, some of his points were a little obnoxious. Like, one of his points was, like, oh, if you say something bad about TSM fans, like, you'll take a hit. If you say something bad about TSM, you'll take a hit. But he got over his normal average of views on this video, which kind of disproves his point. Yeah, so pretty much, to sum up, he was saying TSM fans are hated because they insult worse than other fans. It's the internet. Like,
that doesn't make any sense.
I don't know what else to say. Like, I guess I'm sorry that people use stronger whatever. He says TSM fans are hated more than other fans because they have double standards when talking about their personal and professional aspects of the players, the teams, and the owner. I in part agree, but I think that that's going to happen with any fan base in any sport, in any country in the world. Like, if you are a fan of a team and you have some modicum of emotional investment, like you try to watch their games, you have a favorite player maybe, you've been watching the team for over a year or so, like you have some you've invested time, maybe money into this team. Time is in you've watched them, money is in you've bought some gear. Of course you're going to have a little bit less than a realistic aspect, or you're going to try to always paint them in a good light. Like that's fandom. Like that's what happens,
And Brad won't like me saying this, but when he mentioned Doublelift and things like that and how they hated him before and then he joined TSM and they loved him, I can't stand Sidney Crosby. I wish he was on the Flyers. Exactly. No, your point is exactly proven. Yeah, I hate Sidney Crosby. I wish he was on the Flyers. And I think that is a thing that Thorin kind of doesn't do a good job of recognizing.
Yeah. And again, he did preface this when he's talking about TSM fans, he's talking about the fringe, saltiest, most immature. But it does call into question the whole video. It does call into question these points. It's like you're going to have those fringe people in any organization, and those fringe people, those people that are the saltiest, the most immature, are going to go out on a limb even further to defend players for actions and stuff like that. Do I think what Sven did in 2 years ago at Worlds was a good thing? Was it 2 or 3 years ago at Worlds was a good thing? No, I don't think that was a good thing. Do I think he's matured? Yes, and I think you see that through TSM Legends, through his social media, in-game stuff like that. It's not like we're bringing forward like baseless things. A couple more things. So TSM fans are hated because TSM isn't good, but they say they are good. I understand TSM hasn't ever shown up on the global stage, but TSM is still a really good team. And I understand that if we all sat down and got real, like, is TSM going to win Worlds this year?
Yes.
Of course. I think there is a slight chance, but we would all have to agree that there would be a lot of fluking and a lot of like really, really lucky scenarios that get them there. And we can all agree, like, no. But you better believe that if you're a TSM fan and Worlds comes around, we're winning Worlds, baby. Because that's what a fan is. Like, I mean, unless you are a fan of a team that has historically never won anything. I mean, look at Cubs fans for however many years. Like, of course, every year, like, this is our year. We're going to win this year. We're going to go to every game. We're going to cheer. We're going to, all of this. And then, they didn't win for for over 100 years. And that's just what being a fan is. It's putting aside logical thought, knowing, no, they can't win this, and saying, I'm going to cheer for them anyways. I'm going to stand behind them, and I'm going to root for them to win, and I'm going to hope for them to win because I'm a fan. Like, anyway. And then the last one that one of the last points was, Nobody likes TSM fans because they bring up things that I've said in the past to help their arguments, but they forget what people like Reggie have done or said in the past. Yeah, I mean, and
really
he
apply
brought
to
up this.
a lot
What?
of people. That can apply to like a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead.
No, I mean, yeah, everyone has made mistakes in the past. The Thorin retarded comment, I think, is one that gets brought up a ton. The Reggie and his kind of the weird where he's done it a couple times where he's like called out other organizations for breaking rules that he has technically maybe broken in the past.
And then him saying the thing about Monte Cristo where he's like, everyone knows he's not really the coach for CLG. He doesn't actually do anything.
Right.
And things like that. Don't get me wrong. Reggie is doesn't exactly have a clean record, but that doesn't change the fact that neither does Thorin.
Right. And I think you can't play the game where you sit here and oh, well, who's done more crap in their past? Like that. And if he's sitting down and that's what's bringing Thorin down, like I'm sorry, Thorin, but that's something that you're going to have to let slide. That's something that you're going to have to let hit you and just roll off. Yeah. So, I mean, my main points, like this was to rile up the crowd, and it worked in a sense. And a lot of his points were proven in the comment sections and stuff like that. He did tweet out that he was heartened by some of the comments that he got from TSM fans who were like, you're right. And I think he's not wrong. I think he's being a little bit disingenuous and not being 100% right. So he's technically not presenting anything falsely. He's just not presenting everything that he could, which, we can't argue with the giant that he is in the esports industry. And if that's the way that he wants to do it, that's fine by me. It kind of has to be because he's there. Yeah. Overall, I don't think TSM fans should be getting bent out of shape about this.
Cool.
Sorry, I've talked for a while.
It's okay.
No, I agree with it, man.
I'm gonna leave.
Keep
You guys talk for a little bit.
Keep going.
The only comment I have is that the only big problem that I saw and heard and like really noticed, he really does leave out the context of time, and the context of players' justice, essentially, where season 4. Sven Skaren obviously made some pretty awful comments. Well, not comments, but made his name, what was it, SK Ching Chong or something like that? Like, that's
Taipei Ching Chong.
Taipei Ching Chong. That's dumb. That is really dumb,
Yeah,
and he should obviously be chastised for that.
Do that.
But when we think about the amount of, like, the reason why I don't think you can hold against him as much is because when you look at all the things that's happened to him since then, that ruined his team's chances at Worlds. First of all, he was suspended. Justice was served in that sense. I mean, then he got relegated on SK Gaming. He went from being the first place in the regular season to getting relegated the next split. Like, then he got signed by TSM and was within that entire battle between Rich and Reggie. The amount of things that he's been through, and you could obviously go over the same things that Double Lift has been through, the things that even Bjergsen has been through. The amount of things that these players have gone through have really, Josh, you pointed out a little bit, has really matured them, and that's very true. And while it's not like Thorin hasn't gone through anything, he got fired from OGN for the comments he's made. I haven't seen, and I've watched a decent amount of his content, like a lot of it actually, and I haven't seen a whole lot of progression as a person on Twitter or any social media aspect, really. So while he is not wrong about a lot of the things he's saying, he's also not providing, I think, complete context.
Yeah, he made a bunch of really immature tweets after the TSM victory, which were definitely emotionally and just anger filled. And Yeah, I feel like if you are in the position that he's in, which is you have the ear of the esports community, you are one of the premier esports content creators. You want to see esports grow. You can't be. I mean, it's like everything that everybody says about Donald Trump and his tweets. Like, you can't be doing that, man. But he does it anyway, you know. And I'm not trying to liken the two, but it's the idea of if you are the person who is kind of the liaison between, you know, he talks to NBA stars and people like that. He's one of the more important liaisons between the normal outside world, which we want to sell this whole esports thing to, and the world of esports. And he needs to realize his position and act accordingly. Yeah.
Yes.
I know we're hating on Thorn right now, but he's not always been
not
completely.
hating.
I'm okay. All right. Well, we're
No, I actually kind of
however you want to word it. There's an article on the TSM subreddit I was reading earlier about he wrote after TSM was eliminated from Worlds last year. He said, you know, they played well enough to get out of groups. They're, you know, North America's most dominant team, but sometimes they just got unlucky. They got unlucky group. They did make some mistakes, like flat or dashing into a victor, but we're not going to talk about that right now. But he does give TSM the credit. But how do I word this? He doesn't do it. Obviously, he doesn't do it more often than not. But he can act like a child, like you said with his tweets. Like they were really hate-filled, and like he was hating on Hanser all week, saying someday was gonna smash him. And he just has this ridiculous like love for someday.
And Flame?
Yeah, that's what I meant. I was thinking about the relegation. I was thinking of the
Promotion
gauntlet
tournament.
this upcoming week.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has that hard on for Flame, and then you saw how that turned out. We'll go into that later, though.
Yeah. Before I let Chris has been awful quiet this episode. We're just revving up for his rant. We want it to be fresh off the press. And before I hand it over to my boy Chris to rant away, I do want to say TSM fans are partially to blame for this. I mean,
Of course.
again, you cannot fix a fan base. Like, that's just not necessarily something you can do. But don't be belittling people and you know, calling. I mean, and this is even something that we see on the TSM subreddit. Don't be calling for people's immediate benching after they have a bad series or two bad series. Like, heaven forbid we go 1-1 in week 1. Like, like, just use common sense. And I think a lot of that will come with maturity, which is probably the word that I would, you know, the attribute that I would say isn't found in the people that he's talking about is immaturity. And I would agree with him. There are a lot of immature. League is a game that is played by a lot of younger people. TSM attracts the most fans. Most, you know, a large portion of them are going to be young, and so, yeah. And also, sorry, Brad.
No, you're good.
Also, roughly looking at the numbers I could look at, we don't have actual metrics available, but TSM has roughly twice as many fans as I think almost any other team in North America. I'm sure they have the most fans, maybe not twice as many, but the most fans across North America and Europe. And with that is going to come a louder, more immature voice from kind of the fringe fans. But you know who you are, or maybe you don't. Maybe it's time to do some soul searching. So, all right, Chris, take us away.
All right. To let you guys all know I was so quiet, my fantasy football team looks fucking amazing. They piss excellence every morning, boys. All right, so
I love it.
kudos to whoever tilted Thorn off his goddamn rocker, because damn, that was fucking amazing watching that the whole thing, just his tears were saltier than salty. They were just great. Everything that was coming out of his tweets, his fingers. And then we got an early Christmas present with a 40-minute video of him just bashing all TSM fans, calling us little 12-year-olds, that I thoroughly enjoyed, that I thought was grade A journalism and hard-hitting news right there, Thorin. Great job there, buddy. Whoever did that, whoever the TSM fans that made him go that crazy, kudos to you guys. I'm not condoning it. You guys do you. I don't think that you guys should be included with the whole of TSM. I think you should be a little small sect that we send off when people are being little punks to us.
The alt-right TSM.
Yeah, you're like the little special ops group. We kind of go, okay, you want to mess with our group? There you go. We'll send these guys off on you. You guys just light their comments boards up with everything mean.
I'm washing my hands of this. I have no part in this idea.
Emphasis on special ops.
Don't worry. Yeah. Everybody else, this is my all head stuff right here. But good job. I absolutely loved watching the whole. I'm one of those people that loves to watch the world burn when it does, because when that stuff comes out, I mean, you get to see. Now, I'm not saying the trueness of people, but you get to see people when they're at the angriest and they let their emotions fly, and you get to see a little truth there. So, obviously, I don't think Thorin likes TSM in general, so we're just going to leave that to the side over there. The one thing that I did notice, really going on my rant, is actually going to be the opposite of what everyone else is doing. I'm going to point out some of the cool stuff that I've actually been seeing within the last week here on TSM, actually on the TSM subreddit. So my rant of this week is why I love the TSM fans. Yeah, so kudos out to you guys, because every time that I've seen preparation up to finals, to the day of finals, all I've been seeing on subreddit is love. Shout out to the guy that was giving out his free ticket to somebody that he needed to get rid of it. That was pretty cool. Also, all the people just talking about giving good vibes out to the TSM team. I saw that appreciation thread. I know Bjergsen says that he doesn't like that stuff, but hey, from our podcast to you guys, keep that stuff up because it's cool to watch it read. I always look at it as, if somebody was to hop on the TSM subreddit, right? No matter what the heck they say, it could be Thorn barking off at us, it could be CLG, whatever, someone could say something bad. Somebody's always going to come by the subreddit and go, okay, let me see what this group is always about. There's always going to be that people. And honestly, if they came after the whole Thorn thing went in and they looked at our subreddit, they wouldn't have never thought that we were assholes, we were like mean or anything, or we were actually pretty nice and probably pretty memey more in general because of that double lift and Vincent little post that we had up there for a couple days. Good job for keeping that one up there. That was a good one too, guys.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, just in general, you guys have been just like super just like nice. And I mean, the appreciation thread right now, I'm looking at the top like 2 or 3. Number 1 right now is appreciation for Parth and all those coaching staff. By the way, they killed it during this draft also, so kudos to you guys for doing that. Actually sticking up for Weldon too. I'm looking at some of your guys' comments about the whole Invin debacle over in Reddit, how Korea, quote-unquote, all the fans hate TSM because the scrim leaks. And I mean, if you have half of a brain about networking and listening to the comments last year of how they had to take the VODs, transfer it over the internet to some of their analysts in NA that they didn't want to ship over to Korea, that's a lot of moving. And if in our esports thing in general, we have a lot of guys that just sit on their computers on a daily basis, so we actually have a probably higher amount of, like, in our crowd, probably a higher percentage of people that know how to jack that shit. And if they really want to, they could probably do it, because the infrastructure that TSM was talking about, it's not that hard to probably do. So from transferring it back and forth, so they need to, like, you know, learn something, you know, about like network security before they start mouthing off about, they just let scrims go, blah, 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 let's talk about this. I mean, it's probably the same guys that probably bitched out Thorin to in his comments, so it's probably just, you know, either or. But kudos to you guys for actually kind of sticking up for that and, you know, linking all of that fun stuff to the Weldon comments, because he has been, you know, yeah, he had those questionable comments towards the Korean crowd, which is probably why they're more angry, but, I mean, he did have some good points, and, you know, he did jump ship, but at least we're still showing love to him, because he did bring a lot of good stuff to us when you were here. So, just, like, in general, my rant's going to be kind of more of a short end, but kudos to you guys for tilting Thorn off of his rocker, his old man rocker, because that was pretty entertaining to watch. Not condoning it, but for those fringe guys, yeah. I enjoyed
You did
it.
good
So,
job.
yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it. Don't do it again. But to the rest of us, the whole TSM group, through all this negativity that's been happening, you guys have been keeping super positive. And as somebody that lurks on a 24-hour basis to watch everything going on, good job. And thanks for all the nice and positive comments. I know it's been kind of a negative episode, so this is why I'm bringing the positivity today again, guys. So that's my end rant of the week. Thank you.
Yeah, and you touched on it. I just want to mention it. The Invin hates TSM, like the Thorn rant part 2. I'm kidding. Pay no attention to that. That would be about as much as if everybody on the league subreddit got together and was like, we don't like Longzhu gaming, and they
Longzhu is not welcome here.
they're not welcome. Like, okay, so think about how much you personally have to do with any of the League of Legends teams and their decisions, and then think about how much you saying that you hate players or organizations is gonna have. Yeah, so that's what's going on. Don't worry about that. Who
I'm
cares?
just imagining all of TSM just like sitting in the game and like, oh man, Invent doesn't want us to go over. We're like rocking in their, shaking in their boots, dude. Just
Yeah,
like...
TSM is actually, they were on their flight. They all grabbed their baggage and sprinted off that flight. They're like,
Get
yeah,
me out of here.
we're gonna boot camp in Canada.
We're all gonna stay at Biofrost's house.
Oh man. Anyway, sweet. Well, I think those are all of the announcements that we had. That was a long section of announcements. Holy crap. But we're gonna move on. The only game that we have to break down, we talked about 0 winning packs. The only game that we have to break down is TSM versus Immortals, and we want to do kind of like a more in-depth analysis of this, as it's kind of setting the stage. This was this weekend and last weekend were the 2 times that we saw TSM, after 2 weeks of prepping. So outside of the split, and kind of we want to talk through each game, talk about what went well, what didn't go well, and then we'll go on from there to upcoming matches. So. We're gonna start with game 1. Game 1 was a 38-minute game, and as far as I have this all written down somewhere. Oh, here it is. So yeah, game 1 was the infamous, hey, we're gonna draft a Protect the Tristana comp. But if that doesn't get off the ground, this is Immortals talking. If that doesn't get off the ground, we have no damage anywhere else. They went tank Cho'Gath, obviously, tank Jarvan. They had Galio in the middle, tank, and then they had the Tristana Morgana bot lane. What were your thoughts on this game? What did you like to see? What didn't you like? Go for it.
Oh.
Biofrost freaking owned that level 1. When he was talking about the cheese move, he was talking about this because he blew 2 flashes within the first 2.5 minutes. He blew Xmithy's and he blew, I think, Ole's. Kudos. Oh no, not Cody Sons. I had it right here. The jungle and the ADC. If I just looked at my notes. But kudos to him. That was, I mean, I didn't expect him to pick that because I thought he was just strictly going to try to do that Thresh Braum shit again. But, I mean, his rockin' was on point, and he came out, I think that what he was kind of talking about, the cheesy-wise when he had that interview with Travis Gafford. But I think he was more talking about cheesy level 1s because that right there, I think, kind of set the tone for the whole series. That's my comments.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, of course, he got MVP, but Biofrost played like a god the entire series. But since I'm more of a jungler, I watched Sven more than anything, and he only had that one bad game on Zac. But I think every other game he was pretty much consistent, right around even, or if not positive. I know the one game he was 0-0-7 or something. That's pretty much what you want as a jungler in this meta because you're just a big dumb tank that gets kills for your teammates.
Yeah, this is a meta where having more tanks usually nets you rewards. However, there is a pick that is really good into tanks. And we gotta see. I think one of the things that made me the most excited about this split, this finals, even though TSM did not play probably the best they could have and made a lot of mistakes, is TSM pulled out the Rakan, which is something we hadn't seen, which we usually don't see TSM adapting this much,
we haven't seen it since week 1, I think. Week 1 they picked it.
Right. Well, I'm just saying we haven't seen in the past, past iterations of TSM pulling out new strategies that they've hidden for finals. Like that's not really something. When I think TSM, I think, oh, you know what they're gonna play, And this was, yeah, you're right. The Thresh, the Braum is what we were expecting. They pulled out Rakan, and also Hanser on Gnar was a delight to watch this entire series. Jeff, did you have something to say about this?
Yeah, I do. This series is, to me, the difference between a veteran and a rookie AD carry. Because if you look at the gold differences, Hanser's 5K ahead, Svenskaren's 1.5 ahead, Bjergsen's 4K ahead, and even Biofrost is 3K ahead. Doublelift was only up 600 gold against Cody Sun. And for a lot of it, he was actually behind in gold, if you look at the statistics. But with that very meager gold lead that he only got because they won the fight at the end, honestly, he dealt 5K more damage against the Tristana, by the way, who is one of the highest DPM AD carries the later the game goes. So to me, while he wasn't the main gold source, he didn't have the resources fueled into him like Cody Sun did, he was able to have a much higher impact. And I think having a bigger late game threat, even when it's not as much of a late game champion, is what kind of cemented this game and, to be honest, the series.
Yeah, we saw good reaction play, reactionary moves from TSM throughout this entire series, but definitely this first game with like the bot lane dive that happened and TSM countering that. We did see some, and it wasn't all perfect from TSM. We did see missteps. So Bjergsen misses a stun, has to blow flash, then gets ulted on that bot lane. But you
mentioned the bot lane dive. I kind of thought you were talking about the other one where we tried to dive them and then.
Oh no! I was talking about the one Doublelift and Bio were under tower.
Yeah.
Doublelift got killed, but Biofrost was able to keep the Cho'Gath, keep Flame around for long enough to. For Hanser and Svenskeren to take him down. I think I had a hard time. Well, we can get to this at the end. I was gonna say I really wanted Hanser to get MVP this series, but I'm also completely fine with Biofrost getting it. Anyone else want to say anything about Game 1? We can move on to Game 2, which Game 2 we'll probably have more to talk about because this was TSM's loss. So TSM drafts a interesting composition. So they draft the same Zyrakan bot lane into a comp that this is the comp Immortals played all 3 games versus CLG. This was a Protect the Kog'Maw comp. It was double Ace AD. They had Sejuani in the jungle. They had Olay on the Tahm Kench, and TSM looked like they could have beaten this had their draft been a little bit different. For me personally, I would have wanted to see the Gnar again top lane against the Jarvan. Gnar goes, it's a skill matchup top lane, Gnar Jarvan, and Gnar scales better into the late game, whereas Jarvan falls off a little bit, and especially when you're building when you have to start building tankier, because this meta revolves around building tanky. I think having a Gnar to just make the team fights a little bit more solid would have helped out so much in this game. And also drafting the Zac who cannot fight Sejuani early was what lost this game. Xmithie is the type of jungler who, if you give him an inch, he will take a yard. He will take over your jungle, and he will make that lead kind of spill into his lanes. And he completely bodied Svenskeren out of his own jungle. And I think that is the sole reason for this game being lost. And I don't blame Svenskeren for that. Yeah, his Zac didn't look that great, but you usually aren't going to look that great when you're down 2 levels on the enemy jungler from 5 minutes into the game. What do you guys think about Game 2?
Xmithie, this is the first time he camped the crap out of top. This game, and I personally liked this draft in the sense of when I look back at it and you look at the rest of the drafts, This is them trying something different at the point of the series where there is the least amount of risk. They lose this game, all they do is just go 1-1. It's basically then not a 5-game, but a 3-game set. Yeah, just a best of 3. And you see Parth, well, we'll talk about that in game 3, but he does adjust, obviously. But going into this one, they try something different. They do the Kassadin with the Zac. The Zac and the Renekton are more of, I would consider more of like the Peely tanks, where they're not like just super tanky, they're going to be in front of you and take a ton of damage. And they never, any of the team fights when I was watching it, they had a hard time of making sure both of those guys were together when they started a team fight. They were always usually, Zac would go in first, then have to blow an ult to jump out, and then finally Hansar would jump in. There was a team fight, I want to say around like the 20 or 30 minute mark, where Hansar, they were fighting over by the Baron Pit, and Flame decides to teleport in directly to a ward, while Hansar then decides to go back, revive in the thing, and revive in the fountain, and then teleport back in, which gave him like a half second too late, because by the time he was coming in, Sven is already engaged, he was halfway dead, so then he tried to ult in, and you could just tell that both, maybe the communication wasn't there, and then having Bjerg on Kassadin, it was good thought idea where they were trying to like team ball, and then the Kassadin was trying to split push, trying to break them apart. But I think in the early game of Smithy going 3-1-3, his jungle pressure then just became where, well, we'll just ball up, kill 4 of your players, and then because we're already so far ahead at that point. So I like what they did because they tried more of a split push comp, which that means they wanted to see how that played out. I honestly think that against the team fight comp, they were like, okay, we already know we can beat him with a control mage, double lift, me and double lift sitting in the background, Sven on a tank, put Hansar on a tank, we can win this. Let's try if we can beat him with the split push, and let's see if it's even viable. Obviously, we found out, I think it can be viable if we pick a different jungler pick, but if we actually take the Sejuani away from Xmithy, I think we can make that team comp work. I just think that Sejuani's too strong over Zac right now. Zac's wave clear is too weak early game. It's way too weak early game.
I even think that, I personally think drafting the Gnar there still works with the split push comp, because you have Gnar in a side lane, you have Bjergsen in a side lane, and Gnar just, the thing that I saw was the team fights were so close in this. TSM was always just like, 100 or 200 health away from killing almost everybody on Immortals, but they didn't have enough sustain. They couldn't stay alive long enough to deal that much damage, and I think a large portion of that comes from the Renekton. Now, the Renekton can get in and do a ton of damage to a lot of people, but I think the slows and just the CC available from Gnar would give TSM, I mean, Xayah loves to kite back. Xayah loves to get her feathers down and kite back. And Doublelift didn't, I mean, he only died twice this game. And if team fights had gone a little bit longer, if he's able to get 2 blade callers out in a team fight, this game looks completely different. So that's, I think that the Zac pick is all right. It got exploited heavily early. And I think just, the jungle top lane could have been drafted differently. Brad, do you have something to say about this?
Yeah, this is the game that Immortals banned 5 mid laners, and like they were trying to ban out Bjergsen, and TSM banned 2 on their own if you count Lucian as a mid laner, which I do. And then he still picks Kassadin. Like, I don't think you can't ban him out. Like, they banned Syndra, Talia, Orianna, Vlad, and Galio. But I was gonna praise Parth for his draft. Even with that many bans on mid lane, still having Bjerg a champ to pick, but it's again both on Parth and on Bjerg at the same time. But I like you said, I didn't really like the Renekton pick because they took the Kassadin, who is of course scaling. The later it goes, the better he gets, and then Renekton will fall off if he doesn't get super far ahead, which he didn't. Except Hansar did have that one sick play on Pobelter.
Yeah, the flash
early
stone
in the game. That was nuts.
sick.
But yeah, it was. I mean, this is a very winnable game. I think it comes down to execution.
I wasn't a big fan of skirmishing against Sejuani as much as they did. I think that Sejuani is a lot better in 2v2s and 3v3s now. and she was just able to get her E off too many times in these smaller fights.
Especially with like a Jarvan or a Tom who she can stack that E off of. Yeah. That was a really, really good draft by Immortals.
Yeah.
Very strong Tom.
This does scare me a little bit if TSM wants to take this type of team comp out onto the world stage, because you're going to have teams that are with better top laners than Flame, and you can't rely on the Renekton to get ahead. I think Hanser is really good, and he will have games where he pops off, but I don't think that's something. It's not like a Bjergsen where you can always expect him to go even or get ahead. Hanser sometimes, especially if he's getting camped, will fall behind, and I think that's true. I think that's just kind of the truth about top lane is we don't see Svenskeren hard camping for Hanser, which I don't think is a bad thing, because he invades really well and he splits his time throughout the lanes really well. But this team comp could be an issue if they try to run this at Worlds. So game 3, unless anyone else has anything to say about game 2, game 3 was a very hard fought. This is the longest match of the entire weekend, actually.
This was a heart attack.
Yeah, this one was, a kind of similar comp from Immortals. Protect the Jinx this time instead of protect the Kog'Maw, and still Pobelter on Corki mid. The thing that was strange was there had been no Jinx priority this entire series, and yet I think first rotation, right?
Yeah, they picked it in the first rotation, yeah.
They first rotation Jinx, and so TSM can go all in on, well, if we kill the Jinx, we win the game, which is kind of what the story of this game was. If TSM can kill the Jinx before she kills more than 2 members of TSM will win the game. So they draft Cho'Gath, Orianna, Gragas, and Alistar, all people who, if they hit their spells on the Jinx, she is for, unless the Tahm Kench can only devour once in a 25-second window or however long his cooldown is. And so you've got 4 people there who can really mess up the Jinx. And I think that was just unwise draft from Immortals.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that, on how the game actually played out?
I think that this game, the Jinx, I have actually kind of like thought this one out, why they actually did pick it off so early. Obviously because they already banned out Kalista. Kog'Maw was their second pick, and they already knew, and I want to say, wasn't Trist picked first? Wasn't Trist picked first or second before he got to be able to pick the Jinx, I want to say?
I think so, yeah.
I'd have to check. I'll check real quick.
Yeah.
You can keep talking.
But I think he picked so early because in the weeks before, in interviews, they were saying that they were scrimming each other at a time, right? And so I think that Cody Sun's champion pool for ADCs that he feels comfortable in high-pressure situations is probably 3 champions. And I'm going to assume that it's Kog'Maw, Tristana, I bet he can play Kalista too. Sorry, 4 champions. Kalista, and then the Jinx. And I think he got put down to that point where he was like, I'd rather go Jinx in this situation. So that is my comment to that. I think that also this game, and starting this game and inklings of the ending parts of game 2, you start to see Cody losing focus. He starts losing tracking. He starts to lose the track of. I know a few times he lost the track of Bjergsen's ball, which he got shockwave a couple times. Game 2, sorry not to bring that one back up. There was a team fight when they were trying to push in the bottom tower, close going to inhib, and there was this much left, and him and Pobelter both just focused on the turret, and then Double Lift got to get the stun off with Xayah, and then they got to turn the team fight around, killed probably 3 or 4 of them, and this right here, Cody, he did go off 6-3-1, and he did have the pop-off moments, but right there is, I think that him and Pobelter, you slowly start to see them tilting, and you're like, this is going to be bad. And it shows signs that TSM has this, they're starting to form a identity, and it's aggression. they're going to take it to you, and they're going to try to beat you mechanically. They would rather lose fast than or they would rather lose fast on a team fight that they lost, even if they were down by gold by like 5K or they were down by a couple levels, than sit back and then have a slow death. So they're going to take their chances when they can, and with an inexperienced teams like Immortals, and with them, like with Cody and all that fun stuff, you constantly get that barrage of, oh crap, is Doublelift going to jump on me? Oh crap, is Bjergsen's ball just going to randomly come out of the shadow of the jungle? That, in general, no matter how hard your team is, that's just going to take a toll on you mentally. But it was really cool because you start to see that I think their play style is going to be, we're gonna beat you, or we're gonna take our opportunities, and we're gonna take them, and you better have a really good defense, and if you don't, we're gonna come back in inklings of game 4, but we're not gonna talk about that. But yes, that was my thoughts.
Yeah, just to bring back the draft real quick, just so it was Tristana was first pick from TSM,
Cool.
and it was Jarvan Jinx as the first rotation from Immortals. And if you think about, if you're building a comp around keeping one person alive, and literally the only way, you've got Shen ult and Shen taunt, you've got the Devour from Tahm Kench, and you've got Knock Up from Jarvan.
And he has TP on Shen too, so he's got 2 globals.
Right, and you've got the in certain situations you've got the Jarvan ult, but you're usually going to use that to engage, not really for peel. It just seems like the tools weren't really completely there. You've got a CC-less mid laner, and you know it seems like they picked that, and then I think TSM answered perfectly with the Gragas Alistar. That's what you want.
Yeah,
that was a direct counter.
Yeah, if you're ever stuck in a situation where we can flash pulverize or, you know, flash barrel your Jinx, the game is essentially over. Brad, what were you gonna say about this game 3?
I was gonna say, I hope I'm not stepping on Jeff's toes by saying this because he mentioned it earlier, but this game to me was the difference between a veteran ADC and second year ADC, I think Cody is.
Second split.
Second split.
Okay. Because you saw Doublelift's positioning in team fights is just ridiculous all the time. Well, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But then that one fight at Dragon that Chris was just talking about, when Bjerg put the Ori ball in the middle of a group of people, and then Cody happened to walk right up to it.
I was like, what is he doing?
I just can't see Doublelift ever doing that if he's in the situation that Jinx is in. Like, of course, they drafted the Shen to protect Jinx, like you said. The Jarvan ult will allow Jinx to get as many rockets off as possible on as many people, like anyone in the ult. But I honestly thought TSM was going to lose this game just because of Cody's son popping off so much. He did almost 66,000 damage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what?
It's ridiculous.
15K more than anyone else did, 20K more than anyone else on his team did. Like, somehow TSM pulled it out.
Yeah, and that fight there at Dragon was Immortals 5,000 gold up, and Cody's son I think he was 5-2 and something at that point, either 5-2-1 or 5-2-0 at that point. Like that's where you want your Jinx. That's 38 minutes in the game. Not full items, but close to, you know, definitely 3 items, and I forget exactly how many items. What doesn't matter, but yeah, and this is what I was talking about last week, and I mentioned it to a couple other people as well. As Cody's son, this was his first time in front of a big crowd because Immortals didn't place last split. They didn't play in a 3rd, 4th match. They didn't play MSI. They've played at the LCS studio, and he was one of those players that was kind of like a slow bloomer. I mean, remember Biofrost's first game out was the Bard game against Immortals, Bard game against C9, I believe it was, or it was something like that, where he was making huge plays, and Cody's son kind of quietly grew. I think he's a good ADC, but I think that quietly growing was him getting used to the environment, the competitive environment. And I think personally that this weekend just showed it's going to take a little bit more time. He wasn't ready for this huge crowd, and this huge crowd kind of, I think, weighed on him in a way.
One thing I have to say real quick.
Go for it.
I thought Bjergsen had a pretty uncharacteristic game. I thought before that first fight where that fight where they were really behind, I actually thought he played a really underwhelming Ori, which is weird because that's one of his like historically better champions. And I think that until he had that old on to Cody son, I actually think he wasn't playing well at all.
He got caught a couple times down some. Smithy again being, I think, the MVP of Immortals for this series, and probably like Olay didn't really. I don't want to say Olay didn't show up, but Olay, there were some issues with Olay and Cody's son in the bot lane as well. But Smithy really abused Bjergsen's cooldowns. Bjergsen had to blow flash and man, I'm not remembering everything perfectly, but he had to blow Ghost early, then he had to blow Flash later, and then when he had no sums, he got punished a lot. So I feel like he was playing a lot of the game from behind. But yeah, it was a more uncharacteristic game for Bjergsen in this game.
One more thing I want to add before we go on is I don't get why Immortals took the Jarvan and then put it. I know Jarvan's a flex pick, and Flame just popped off. He went 5-0-14 in the previous game on Jarvan. Then they put Xmithy on it. I know you want Shen to protect the Jinx, but I don't think Jarvan into Cho'Gath is that bad of a matchup, and I don't think Shen ult is that much better than what other top laners can do. But I just don't understand why. Yeah, you take the Jarvan, then you flex it to jungle. Other than to protect the Jinx, of course.
Yeah, I could have seen a Sejuani instead of a Jarvan because they've got the double 80 carry mid bot, so it's not like they're gonna be lacking in damage like they were game 1. Sejuani wasn't banned until phase 2. I think it's just we're in a time, especially with so many flex picks, where taking flex picks is actually quite important, because you really can find out. I mean, that Jarvan was answered. Well, no, because then they picked Shen. Yeah, I don't know. And that's another thing is for Coach of the Split. And again, who knows how much pick and ban is done by him. Song didn't knock my socks off like with his picks and bans. It seemed like all right. It seemed like they had good ideas, but there's a couple things that, like the Jinx early and stuff like that made me wonder. The shining star for Immortals for me was Xmithy and his play.
Oh yeah, he's insane.
Yep. So I got out of game 3 and I was like super hyped. TSM, they're 2-1. It looks like, they just shut down this.
I'm gonna be right back. Keep going.
Okay.
You're good.
They just shut down this this Immortals team comp, and now you've got like one game left. They draft a team comp very similar to what Immortals had played. So the Corki mid, Tristana, you've got Rakan again. Everything's looking good. But then the game starts going downhill. And this game, if you didn't watch it, go watch it. If you're a TSM fan, you must watch this game. Was really a story of TSM not adapting in game fast enough. This game got really out of hand, and they should have lost.
They should have, yeah.
Because they didn't adapt to the style that Immortals wanted to play. I applaud Immortals for changing up and going to Rumble in the top lane. And
yeah, that was really smart, actually.
The Rumble with the Sejuani and, I mean, even the Xayah and with the Alistar, just all of that CC is what you need with Rumble. And Flame's ults were on point.
Yeah, they were nuts.
The first 20 minutes of the game, they were on point, and he was picking up tons of kills. And it was kind of like the Jinx situation. You've got the Rumble where you want him to be. He's ahead of the curve. He's got his items. He's got all of his magic shred items on. He's got, he's ready to go. And then TSM chose the last moment that they could have fought to fight, and they win it, and they don't lose a single fight after that. What were you what were you guys' thoughts, or at least some of them, because I know there's many thoughts on this game.
It turns out Immortals, when they're up 7-0, never win.
With Lucian.
Yeah. But no, I think while they really did play a poor early game, TSM, I think a lot of that comes down to Flame is a world-class player. Xmithy is a world-class player, especially in the early game. And basically, Immortals as a whole, I think, are going to be a pretty strong force internationally, because of their early game, honestly. But what I really enjoyed is when we saw the mic check later on, and what we heard before the big fight essentially was Biofrost saying, "I'm going to flash on Lucian." I think that level of decisiveness from someone like Biofrost is what we've been looking for. Biofrost has matured so much as a player. His laning has gotten so much better. So much better. They're 2v2ing everyone and winning. They won all 3 lanes in the last 3 games. The first lane they lost, but that was an expected loss lane. But Biofrost's decisiveness in the late game, his laning, all around, he's went from like a B tier support to an S+, fuck everyone else support. Honestly.
Yeah. I love that he pulled out a playmaker and kind of shut a lot of people up, because there had been, he was playing Braum, Thresh, Lulu, Karma, Save My AD Carry, and to see him go on a champion, and it had, callbacks to when he was playing Bard. Like, we've seen him make plays. We've seen him make very decisive moves within matches that turn games, or at least solidify TSM's place in a game. And that's what we saw. We saw, yes, some mistakes out of Biofrost in the laning phase. There was, again, very great roaming and map pressure from Xmithy during the early game. Go figure. And that's what got them ahead. A couple poor decisions, a couple team fights where, people stood too long on Rumble's ult or were stunned on Rumble's ult. And so overall, really good play from Immortals. But when it mattered, when TSM literally, if TSM had not taken that fight at the inhib, they had one tower going down, a Nexus tower, and Immortals could have probably split damage and taken the other tower down, maybe even the Nexus. And you get into a situation where TSM had to fight there, and he is willing in a finals match, in a decisive moment at the last second. He's saying, I am going to do this, and that was their path to victory. And it wasn't like the game wasn't done at that point, but the momentum shifted within 2 seconds, like from 100% in Immortals, hands to TSM pretty much had control the entirety of the rest of the game. And that's a huge play by Biofrost, and that, I think, is one of the main reasons why we saw him win MVP. Also, LOL Esports Twitter put out a video of the last team fight that secured TSM the win on Rakan. And if you watch how he plays, his Rakan is very good. The targets that he's choosing to shield, the people that he's choosing to knock up when he uses his Ignite even, it's all very wise play, and it's great playmaking from him.
Yeah. One thing I was going to bring up was, like you mentioned, Biofrost, I'm going to flash on Lucian. Bjergsen just goes, okay, I'll follow up. Like, there's no second guess by anyone in the team. Like, you hear some of the times someone calls for, like, push top, or can we actually win, something like that. And then there's like, not bickering, but that's pretty much what it is. But Bjergsen just goes, okay, and then he follows the youngest member on the team. Well, the newest, I don't know age-wise. I assume he's the youngest.
He is.
Okay,
yeah.
So the best Western mid of all time, and he just takes the call. He just puts all his faith in his support. Another thing was, this draft was questionable from Immortals, because all the pregame analysis was like, they don't want to give Biofrost Rakan again because they saw what happened last time. Then Immortals hovered Rakan and then switched to Xayah first pick last minute. And I think of course, if Biofrost didn't get Rakan, the game would have been completely different.
Yeah.
And it probably would have forced Doublelift to take Xayah instead of Tristana. And then who knows how the draft goes from there.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they also banned Jarvan, which was strange. Yeah, I feel like there isn't. I feel like across, because I also watched all of the third, fourth, and finals matches in Europe as well, and a kind of a trend that I'm seeing is, especially when you've seen some LCK stuff, is it feels like there's no cohesive thought throughout a series. Like it's almost as if coaches will forget what's happened previously. So the Jarvan, I mean, yes, if they wanted to play Rumble and that was their like we are playing Rumble this game, the Jarvan makes some sense, but TSM hasn't had priority on that, and that has been a champion that Flame has done well on. Anick Smithy honestly did very well getting ahead in the game. So the Jarvan ban, when you could ban a Rakan instead, and then adapt your top lane after that. I guess they were dead set on playing Rumble, which almost worked out for them. But yeah, the drafts kind of were questionable. And just kind of, it makes me like, are you thinking about the games that just happened, or yeah?
So to continue off the thought about the draft, from my comments last time on the game 3, I think this is where my whole theory came into a conclusion about Cody having a very small champion pool that he's comfortable with. I think they tried to jinx the game before and was like, oh, let's do this. And he did have a pop-off game, but they also saw within that game is that when Cody decides to go, hey, I'm not going to pay attention to an Ori ball, or I'm not going to pay attention to someone that can stun me, it's going to happen because he's going to get focused down, or he's going to focus in on whoever he's trying to attack at the time. So I think the Xayah pick was them going, well, shit, Kallista's gone. Kog'Maw's gone. Do you really want to play Tristana? Or he probably went like this. Do you want to play? Or he probably didn't get a choice because they were going. They probably looked at it and goes, well, we're not going to pick Rakan because if we pick Rakan, then they're totally going to pick Xayah, or they're going to go Tristana and then ban it out because they probably had a plan for 2 and 3 pick. So they gave him the choice and he goes, fine then, yeah. Or the song goes, you're playing Xayah this game, and he goes, oh shit. And well, I could think about it too is that because he was getting stunned so much times with the other 2 ADCs, that with Xayah, at least with his ult, he has one guaranteed where he can fuck up and go, I wash my hands of this situation. I wash him. I'm sorry. I redo. He gets that one chance. With other ones that
even then, there were times he died with ult up.
Oh yeah, I'm not excusing. Oh yeah, no, I'm not excusing his play at all. I'm just saying that I think that's going to be an issue going into Worlds. Is that for one of the few times that when I look at TSM or I look at when I look at TSM and then I look at Immortals, you look at TSM and you go, okay, you can do this against them, but they might come up with a strategy in between. But they might be able to outplay you that day because TSM as a group, they're forming their cohesiveness and coming together. This is almost their second year as a group, as a team almost. So now they're becoming to the point where they're establishing their personality, not as players, but as an org of we're going to beat you mechanically at the end of the day, and we're going to beat you quickly, or you're going to have to beat us quickly, or we're going to come back on you. It's either or. And if you want to team fight us, you're going to fight us on our terms. And that's what. And I feel like throughout the whole series, you saw them even when they were down 10K. Sven was still going in for initiations on his jungle play. You even saw that even him on Zac. Like there were a few times where they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna fight over chickens right now," and you're just like, "Why?" Well, because it's TSM and they need a little inch just so they can, snowball it out of effect. Game 2 didn't happen. But when it does happen, it turns into Game 4, and then everyone's going, wow, that was one of the greatest league comebacks that I've ever seen. And you're just like, and that's going to be our personality. When other teams are going to look at this film, and they're obviously going to not just look at the finals film, but they're going to notice throughout the whole split is that this finals was kind of a mirror image of this split, where they started off strong in the beginning, and then in the middle, game 2, they tried a different team comp, or they were trying different stuff. Obviously, they lose. They go, they have that little slump in the beginning, and they finally eventually pull themselves out and go, okay, this is our bread and butter. We want to win this way, but we're willing to try different things. So that's going to be the interesting part going into Worlds, is that what TSM are you going to prep for? And what are they going to learn from the new patch? Because we haven't even seen the new patch yet, and that's just going to be, are they going to come out with guns of flaring, or are they going to come out and trip over their face and fall flat? Who knows at this point, but at least we have a team identity. At least we don't look like Immortals and go, okay, if we pick off on Cody's son, that team's going to fall into shambles. No matter how much, game 3 proves the perfect point. Doesn't care how much resources you give him that kid. That kid was 6-3-1. He's still going to throw a game for you if he's tilted. And
I hope that's something that he can grow out of, and I hope that's something that he definitely learned from, because I want to see more talent from NA, and I want to see NA organizations, especially as we're going into Worlds. I want to see them succeed, but yeah, that's definitely an issue.
Oh yeah,
I like Cody's son. I don't have any problem with the player himself.
Yeah, and I totally agree too. It's just that this is the first time where you look at a TSM and you can't go, oh, Biofrost is going to be the reason why they lose a game. As of last year, when you walked in, yeah, we had a great fucking team last year. But I even had my doubts of going, okay, Biofrost is going into his first Worlds. And and that to me is going, okay, yeah, we might have had the more flashier look going into Worlds after this. Yeah, our finals might have not looked as perfect as we wanted to look as fans or whatever. But I feel like there's going to be a lot more positive. And if we do get into the group of death, I actually give us a fighting chance to get out of it, because we're not going to sit back and go, oh, well, guys, I guess we can't figure out the meta. We didn't have enough time. I actually think that they will try different stuff. If shit don't work, they will go back to their bread and butter, but they will try different things. And I like the personality growing. And I think we saw that throughout the series.
Yeah, this isn't like TSM last year where Haunter, for some reason, doesn't go in on Kennen when he has the exact opening. This is the TSM that says we're going to go in and then goes in.
Oh yeah, I'd rather watch us lose on a team fight that we had a possibility of winning and then turning a game around than us kind of doing old Gravity. I think that's what it was, where they would just slowly let the team just beat them. Just slowly march it out for 50 minutes and not do anything and not being proactive. So
yeah, we're gonna have to move on. We'll definitely be talking about TSM more as we kind of see the draft play out and see who they're going to be up against as we get closer to Worlds. Right now, so that's all that happened this past week. Coming up, we do have kind of 3 things coming up. The first one, Vainglory. The Vainglory squad will be playing at the Summer Live Championship. That will be on the 9th. If they win on the 9th, they'll be going on to the 10th. They were the first seed out of North America. They will play in the last game on the 9th. I don't know exactly what time that's going to be. Tune in for that. Cheer them on. They're expected to win this tournament, and they're looking like one of the better teams. So we'll break that down and tell you more about that next week. The other thing is the promotion, not the promotion tournament. Why did I write promotion? Why did you guys let me write that? It's not the promotion tournament. It's the gauntlet. I don't know why I'm changing it now too.
Oh,
whatever. I'm changing it so when I delete this, like in an hour, whatever. Thank you. The gauntlet is going to be happening this week, and I don't want to go necessarily too in depth on how you think every team is going to do. Obviously, those teams are not TSM, but we do want to know who's the third team that's going to be joining us in the Worlds tournament. So let's hear your predictions. Brad, who's making it out of the gauntlet, and short summary of why?
C9. Just because, I think Dig will beat FlyQuest, and then that means Dig will go on to play CLG, and I think CLG has an edge the way they've been playing lately there. And I just think C9 is, of course, they're like the boss, if you want to call it that, of the tournament. And I just think C9 doesn't have any weaknesses. They got caught against. They lost to Envy, right? Was it Envy?
No, they lost.
It was
to
a Dig. Okay, yeah.
don't know why I said
So
envy.
I think they just got they had a rough weekend. Jensen was sick that weekend, I believe. So I just don't see C9 losing to any of these teams remaining in the gauntlet.
Cool. And Jeff, what do you think?
FlyQuest, baby. No, I'm joking. Definitely not FlyQuest. I actually do think it's going to be Dignitas.
All right.
Basically, I think that series against CLG was it was a bad showing, and they're a team that hasn't played well against CLG historically. I think they lost both their series against them in the regular split, but at the same time, I think that coming into it, I still think Dig is overall a better team. I think we're going to see a bit more of a measured kind of gameplay style from Shrimp. I think that his early games, when he goes off, it's really good. When he doesn't go off, it's really bad. But I think that playoffs was more of a case of CLG overperforming and then Dig underperforming as well. I think that on any given day, they should have the advantage. That's just not what happened last time.
Right.
And then we've seen them play against C9, and I think that was a little more realistic of what both teams' actual skill levels are. I think that it's going to be a similar situation where I think it's just going to be close, but Dig will be able to take it.
Yeah. Chris?
I think CLG is going to go. I think they already went through the bullshit with Omar God and everybody giving them so much shit that they got nothing to lose at this point, and I think that's a good mindset to go into these type of gauntlet situations. It's the same exact mindset C9 had when they had their little run, and they are, out of everybody, seem the least amount of team that's going to tilt. I still think C9's pretty tilty at this point, and I just want to see Sneaky stream more. That's it.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm gonna hedge my bets a little bit. I think CLG is gonna do it, but if Dignitas beats CLG, then I think I think C9 is a broken team right now. I think they have a lot that they need to figure out. Both their bot lane looking all right, but in an ADC, protect the ADC meta. Holy crap. Gonna protect the ADC meta. Sneaky plays well, but I don't know. The biggest problem is the top lane, though. There's a lot of top laners.
Yeah.
Someday and Darshan. Darshan has been looking on point, and Someday is he's one of the better top laners in the league. And because of that, I don't think that C9 has a chance. I really don't know who's going to win the rematch of Dig CLG, and I think that will be that's going to be an interesting match. If we could send 4 teams to Worlds, it would be Dig, CLG, and what it would be the final 4 teams that we saw in this finals tournament. I think that was a good representation of North American skill. So, sweet. So make sure that you guys tune into that this week. And now all of the notes are gone, so I have no idea when that is. Now it says glaucoma. So,
Nice.
And we've got the League of Legends. The World's group draw is also going to be happening on Tuesday. It's going to be happening right before we're going to have some fresh things to talk about next week. So real briefly, let me try to explain to the best of my knowledge, and then you guys go read and tell me why I'm wrong. They're going to be drawing teams into pools, all of the play-in teams. So they have play-ins this year for Worlds, and it's not just the play-ins from the other regions, like the wildcard regions. Everybody except for Korea has a play-in team. That might not be 100% correct. Whatever. I'm trying to get through this quickly. They're going to be drawn into. There's going to be 3 teams in each pool. The teams will play each other. The top teams will make it. The top 1 team from each pool will make it into the groups. There's also the group draw, which is the same rules as it's always been. I'm not 100% sure how those two are going to work in tandem, seeing as you won't know exactly which region is coming out of the play-in groups, and with all the rules, if you can't be in the same group as someone else from your region. So I have no idea how that all is going to work out.
Real quick, it's
yes.
mostly wildcard teams in the play-in stage, so I really hope that CLG doesn't win because we know how that works out.
Yeah, so that could go poorly. I could honestly see I can imagine a world where only 2 NA teams make it into the World's Tournament, which
I think
whatever.
that's likely, actually.
Yeah. So tune into that. That'll be nice and early in the morning, Tuesday, September 12th at 5 a.m. Pacific time. So if you're on the East Coast, you can be a little bit happier, but that's still nice and late. The last thing, we missed this in announcements because I kind of had a brain fart when I was putting this together. Bjergsen was your MVP for the 2017 summer split.
Good for him.
The notes that I would have to say about this is I think Smithy and Ole split votes, which hurt both of their chances. Bjergsen lost to Jensen in votes, but had so many Player of the Game awards that he was able to pull ahead and actually win the MVP award.
Which is how it should be.
Yeah, I think it's merited. I think there is definitely arguments that you could make for many people. This split especially, there's been many, many different players who have really shined, who have really carried their team. But Bjergsen won it. Congratulations to him. I think that's 3 or 4 for him.
3.
Could be more. So, yeah. So, appreciation thread for Bjergsen. Kidding. Also, my co-hosts are writing all sorts of things on the show notes. TSM apparently wins Worlds, so tune into that.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. And there's also a sushi burrito. So
I think that's a good time to have on Sushi Burrito. Wrap this thing up. Get it?
So
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I walked into that one. I
quit.
I walked into that one.
Mic
Yeah.
drop.
No. So, well, thank you everybody for tuning in to yet another episode. We had our greatest amount of views last week on our episode 4, probably because I have no idea why. Probably because an imposter Bjergsen was in the comments. So if that was the real Bjerg, I'm sorry, but it wasn't the real Bjerg. So that was, I watched your podcast
okay.
after winning the finals. Thanks, guys.
Hey, it's another view. Don't hate on him.
I'm not. Yeah. I'm really split ethically because it's another view, but it's somebody impersonating a professional, so I don't know how I feel about that. However, all of you people who are not impersonating Bjergsen, thank you so much for tuning in. We love doing this. We're gonna keep doing it, and we love hearing all the feedback from you guys. So like and subscribe our videos. Check us out on SoundCloud if you have a long drive and you can't watch us and you don't want to waste a whole bunch of data. And burn your cell phone battery, because I experienced that a lot. Or just buy a new phone for us. Thank you.
A burner.
HTC.
Yeah, HTC. So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
Side burrito, sushi burrito out, whatever it is. Side note, sushi burrito out.